All right, we're going to start with the nation. Court order restraining IU deepens PDP's post-poll crisis. U.S., $100 million for 5 West African nations. Supplementary polls hold April 15th in Oyo, Imo, Edo, and other states. 489 electoral infractions recorded, 791 arrested during polls, says police. Colloquium put off for prayers to mark Tinubu's birthday. 77% Nigerian women risk skin cancer for using toning cream. How to make Nigerians unleash potential by ex-UK Prime Minister. Ngige meets Annie Ofili Ajah to prevent NLC strike. All right, which story?
The Minister of Labour and Employment is taking steps to avert the impending nationwide strike of the Nigerian Labour Congress that was supposed to start on Wednesday. So we know that the labor union have threatened to embark on a nationwide industrial action if the cash crunch, fuel scarcity, and electricity tariff increase were not addressed. And in response to the strike threat by the NLC, Ngige had to invite the leadership of the NLC, the central rank of Nigerian management, to a meeting in his office yesterday to resolve the differences. And it was a 10-man delegation from the NLC, including President Joe Ajaero, the General Secretary Emmanuel Ajah, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, who was accompanied by 2 other people, Deputy Governors Kingsley Obiora and Ade Shonobi. And in his opening speech, that's Ngige, he was saying that he's been doing something about this matter, that immediately he received the letter from the NLC, he forwarded the same letter to the CBN Governor before traveling out of the country for an International Labour Organization Governing Board meeting, and directed the Permanent Secretary and Trade Union Services and Industrial Relations Department to follow up on the matter. Emefiele on his part said that when he received the letter from the Labour Ministry, he called the president of the NLC to brief him on steps that he's taking to alleviate the sufferings of the masses. And he also went further to have a meeting with the president, which resulted in them, giving a lot of money to the deposit money banks, and that's why Nigerians are able to withdraw some money from the bank. So the NLC, went ahead and said if the CBN governor had, consulted with the stakeholders before going around this policy, he wouldn't have felt it this way, but he just went ahead on his own and did it. So hopefully they will have another meeting today, which will determine if the strike will continue or not.
You had a deadline, February 25th.
Yeah.
Trying to do something. Go ahead.
Yeah. I have the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson he's visited Lagos, and he's in Lagos for the 16th Osigwe Anyam Osigwe lecture series, and the lecture theme was Rehumanizing Human Experience. And according to the former British Prime Minister, first of all, he says he's excited to be in Nigeria again, and that then he gave us conditions that he thinks will make Nigerians realize this enormous potential that we have. He says equality before the law, enforcement of laws without fear or favor, election of a leader through free and fair process is very necessary. He says prioritizing education and freedom of speech is also important. Also, in his speech, you could see he was trying to forge this relationship between the UK, a better relationship between the UK and Nigeria. He talks about Nigeria being a superpower for renewable energy, even still being the producer of oil and gas. And he says now is the time when many countries are, going their separate ways or disintegrating, but now is the time that Nigeria and the UK can come together instead and forge a deeper relationship that would affect the Nigeria positively and impact on our economy positively.
All right, so supplementary polls. INEC is saying that April 15th, we're going to be having polls in Oyo, Imo, Edo, and other states for senatorial and other state constituencies. However, more importantly, they'll be having the governorship elections in Kebbi State and Adamawa. If you recall, there were issues, the INEC had declared the elections there, the gubernatorial elections there, inconclusive. And the results from Adamawa especially was because the APC challenger had gotten about over 390,000 votes, while the incumbent had gotten over 420,000. However, the difference between what the incumbent had scored and what Binani scored was less than the number of registered voters within that area. So there had to be a rerun. So there were issues of ballot snatching, ballot box snatching and all that. So INEC has asked for a rerun, and that will happen April 15th, hopefully by then, because that's the governorship many of us are waiting for, possibly the first female governor. We're hoping that if it goes that way, if
that's what the people want.
If that's what the people want, it'd be great to have that. But there's going to be a rerun on that in that state, and hopefully let people come out and vote so that their voices can be heard.
So the vice president to the U.S. is in Africa, a week-long visit, checking 3 African countries, and she started off in Ghana. That's Kamala Harris. And on the visit, she has pledged the $100 million for 5 West African nations. And this is to counter the effects of the investment that China and Russia have made into Africa, saying that there's a lot of infrastructural investment by Chinese into Africa and a lot of military presence by Russia into Africa, especially because Nana Akuf, I want to pronounce Akufo-Addo, the president of Ghana, had said that he is concerned about the presence of Wagner Group, which is a Russian military group, and their presence in Burkina Faso very close to Ghana, and the fact that there's a lot of their military presence, a lot of West African countries are fighting one form of terror or
civil unrest.
Civil unrest. He said struggling to quell violence of armed groups within their countries, and they feel that their presence, bringing in that money, funding the military, supporting the West African countries would help reduce the instability. However, the president of Ghana said he's worried about the fact that Africa is once again going to be the playground of world powers fighting for supremacy.
Okay, The Punch. IU must go. G5 governors Atiku campaign clash. Ngige Emefiele meet NLC over planned strike. Lagos tenant stabs friend to death during argument. Ramadan VC senator-elect advised Muslims on kindness and sacrifice. Abacha died on the eve of dad's planned execution. Nigeria can defeat terrorism like UK, says Boris Johnson. Don't travel to states of origin for census, says NPC. And reps invite ministers, firms over $2.4 billion oil sale.
The human interest story. So a woman, Annie Ofili, allegedly stabbed her friend, Glory Okon, to death at her residence on the Greenville Estate, Badore, in Ajah area of Lagos State. So according to the story, it said Okon paid a visit to her friend, Ofili, and then they started having a conversation. And while they were conversing, it degenerated into an argument, and then the scuffle started. They were shouting at each other. Neighbors were trying to, open the door, but they were not able to till they had to go and get the landlord. And before they could get into the building, she had stabbed her friend at the back and at the neck. She was on a pool of blood. In a pool of blood. And, the friend was quickly rushed to the hospital, but by the time they got there, she was pronounced dead and then taken to the mortuary. As at the time they were writing the story, they didn't have an idea what caused the issue, but the police is aware. She's been arrested. Investigations are going to be carried out, and then she will be prosecuted, found guilty.
All right, let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we continue with our review. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. We're still reviewing Punch. Anybody had a story?
Yes, I was going to take the story of, similar to the story to Mariam took about Boris Johnson, but this time he was talking about how Nigeria can defeat terrorism in a similar way that UK did. He mentioned how the Metropolitan Police were so impartial and supervised, in securing UK, that they arrested Prince Andrew, who is one of the sons, the son of the late Queen. He also mentioned how the challenges with Nigeria, we need freedom, we need security, we need democracy, we need openness and tolerance to achieve urban success. He spoke about the fact that we can't continue to allow groups like Boko Haram and the Islamic State, where they believe that there's something wrong with reading a book, where children cannot read a book. He akin that to the fact that we are wasting our human resource. He said he ended with the thought that he cannot wait for, Nigerians cannot wait for the change to happen. There's a lot of breakdown right now. Right. And when some nations are being disentangled from one another is the time when Nigeria should stand up and be great and that UK and Nigeria are two strong democracies in the world, casting aspersions on Russia and China.
All right, so Dr. Babatunde Diya, the son of the former Chief of Defense Staff, late Lieutenant Oladipo Diya, was speaking about the life and times of his father. If you recall, his father recently passed, and many have actually sent their condolences. He was particularly reminiscing on how his father cheated death twice, and this was a popular story for many who knew that. Where the first one was that when he went to the restroom and then a bomb exploded, you know, and the fact that he was also sentenced to death, and the day before the sentence was supposed to carry out, that's when Ajah died. So everything, just believe that he was one man that really cheated death twice, and God was with him, and he was just talking about the great man his father was, and may his soul rest in peace.
And he's getting a state burial.
Sorry?
He's getting a state burial from
Ogun State, which is fantastic.
I have a story in Punch. The National Population Commission has said that it has put measures to guard against all forms of malpractices ahead of the forthcoming population and housing census. So in response, that the spokesperson for the commission, Yahaya, in response to questions on how it will take place, he says people should stay where they are to be counted. They are not to move to their states of origin. So you don't need to get on a donkey and travel to Bethlehem. It says it's totally against the essence of census if you leave where you reside to go back home, because they need to understand where people are. So those who would need, facilities like health and education. So it's important to know the number of people that are in a particular area at the time. And then he also said something. He said this is a de facto census where they'll be asking practical questions about those who are living, but not those who are yet to be born. They said we have not trained our enumerator to count people who are yet to be born. And they're saying that they'll make sure that this has, it goes smoothly, has no issues, and it has, integrity. So.
Okay, Daily Sun, more trouble for Ayu. I respect Yoruba, can't disparage them, says Nwanyawu. FG moves to avert labor strike over naira scarcity. Ayim Osigwe lecture, ex-UK Prime Minister, six stronger Nigeria between ties. Fanika Ode replies UK High Commissioner. FMC Umwahia performs 11 kidney transplants and records 80% success. That's good news.
Yeah.
Polls, police arrest 781 electoral offenders, recover 132 weapons nationwide. And pro-Tinubu protests rock Abuja. Suspended herdsmen kill 5 in Benue communities. Go ahead.
Good news. So kidney transplants and nephrologist and immediate past chairman of Nigeria Medical Association, Abia State Chapter, Chimezie Okon, said that the Federal Medical Center in Umuahia, Abia State, performed his 11th kidney transplant with 80% success in all the cases. He said the latest successful case was performed on a 68-year-old diabetic and hypertensive patient, and the patient suffered from end-stage kidney disease. He's been on dialysis at the BT Toots Mediplex and Kidney Center, Umuahia. According to them, he said that the hospital has been having huge successes in the kidney transplant since inception, and they have a lot of issues that they are going through, which would which sort of challenges the kidney transplant. However, that they need support from a lot of people, politicians, people from across Nigeria, to patronize instead of taking the resources and seeking medical care outside the country. And so some of the challenges that they have is the manpower drain, out-of-pocket payment by the patients, and need for more equipment for a kidney transplant. But by the time people patronize, they will be able to get money for some of these things. It's a very good one. We have good hospitals here. We have great doctors here who are doing the job, and they need a lot of support from the state and federal government. And we also need to support them by seeking medical care within Nigeria.
So there was a protest in Abuja. Supporters insist, these supporters under the natives, they call themselves on the age of the natives, to counter calls for cancellation of the presidential poll. They were coming out to say that they are declaring absolutely that no mandate was lost, INEC performed credibly well, and that the election was free and fair. But what was really disheartening was the fact that it disrupted. There were lots of daggers drawn, broken bottles, attacked fellow protesters, smashing of bonnets of cars, disrupting vehicular movement, forcing most of the cars to drive against traffic. This happened in Abuja, and it's quite disturbing that protesters come out and then attacking each other. You know, I saw a video that was saying recently that during Abacha, during MK of 1993, there was these kind of disruptions and people died, but Nigeria is still standing. things will happen. People will die and go, but Nigeria is still here. So if you use your life to sacrifice, what's the point of going to protest and then go and start stabbing somebody and drawing knives? It doesn't make any sense. Let us tell our children, our loved ones, yes, protests should be civil and should be smooth, and it shouldn't turn to a bloodbath. And this is really quite painful. But there's nothing wrong in protesting. They're insisting that their candidate got over 1 million votes, and the 8 million votes are also human beings, and they also that their mandate was not stolen. Remember there was a protest saying that the mandate was stolen. That they had to protest for the other party. I think it was Labour or PDP. But the APC guys are also coming out saying that they also voted. So we're not insects now. We are human beings. All right, and let's move on to.
I have a story. Let me take the story of ethnic profiling and Fani-Kayode's response.
FFK.
Yes, FFK, the former aviation minister and spokesperson for the presidential campaign, has responded to the British envoy, and let me just quote the British envoy, because it was of the opinion that Fani-Kayode's statement was inflammatory and that it was ethnic. The statement was that people shouldn't. It was inciting, and he said that nobody should be chanting anti-Igbo messages or walking the streets by the polling unit, which they observed in their. That's the UK observers observed that, and he said that the APC should have distanced itself from FFK's statement when he said that Lagos was no man's land. Well, FFK's reply was very, very, very serious.
Very FFK.
Very FFK. He said, this is my response, in addition to my response to the little Englander. Yes, he said, permit me to add the following addendum to my earlier personal response to the little Englander. Then he went on to say that the British diplomat had no right to interfere in what happens in Nigeria, that they're not supposed to interfere in our internal affairs or to be partial. They are not supposed to tell us what to do. They're supposed to, I stand by my word, that's according to him, and we do not need any lessons from him. Foreign diplomats come to this country to enhance our relationship, not to give us lectures. Of course, he said other things that are not relevant, but what he says is the British had no business interfering with their Nigerian
What's about the
affairs.
British to come out with their list, Sha?
What would they do?
No, do you know that list?
No, they are not supposed to show us the list. They said,
they will.
yeah, no, they said
They would just ban.
They said they wouldn't, yes. This time around, they wouldn't show the list. But they know.
But they mentioned his name.
And it's growing.
Okay, Vanguard. Find a story of not taking. Lagos government grants access to Christian terminal classes. Kidnappers demand 50 million naira for abducted core members of 4 INEC officials in Kogi. Cash crunch in Ngige weight in meet NLC, CBN over planned strike. Any attempt to stifle press freedom unacceptable, says U.S. Embassy. Health, Nigeria's access to safe water still moving target. How Nigeria can unleash human potential, says ex-British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. 9 days after INEC holds on to result in 183 constituencies. All right, so the Lagos State Ministry of Education yesterday granted permission for classes in the terminal classes to access Christian High School Okwebi for the physical learning ahead of their examinations due to begin soon. So if you know, we call those classes that are graduating or moving to the next class, it's important for them to go back to school. So the school was shut down over the controversial death of the 12-year-old Whitney Adedino, who died on February with alleged electrocution, according to the coroner's inquest. The Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, in a statement said that while giving an update of the deceased student, Ms. Whitney Adedino, she hinted that arrangements are ongoing for other categories of the students to return to school. The school will remain closed until necessary judicial processes superintended by the State's Ministry of Justice and other ongoing administrative inquests within the purview of the Office of the Education Quality Assurance. So though they are opening those terminal classes, the judicial process is still ongoing with the school concerning the death of this young girl.
So I want to take the story of water. We still have a water crisis in Nigeria. Nigeria failed to meet the SDG Goal 6. We have only 10% of the Nigerian population having access to basic wash, and about 67% use basic drinking water services per capita. They also mentioned the fact that based on the 2021 mapping that was done by the UN, 23% of Nigerians do not have access to basic water services. It is a really sad thing, but the good news is there is a roadmap, and it seems like Nigeria is moving, according to the reports, that the access to table water is still a moving target, which
Right.
means we're not getting there anytime soon.